So is capitalism that dirty a word? Bashing it might get you the Democratic nomination for president, but does it risk your ever getting elected president? From the right, Inez Stepman, who says it's all wrong. From the left, Kevin Chavos, who insists a tired old charge from the right. So, Kevin, I think the gist of your argument is that attacking capitalism is fair game for a general election as well.
It is, but I will admit that it's a dangerous game because we are a proudly capitalist country, and most people, they like the idea of helping lift all boats, but the idea of becoming fully blown socialist is troubling to people. But we have to understand why there's popularity behind Bernie Sanders' message. Once again, he had a very strong fundraising quarter, the highest amount raised of any Democratic candidate, all from small donors. And most people support this idea that the extremely wealthy should be taxed more. I believe Gallup polls consistently show about 60% support for the wealth paying more in taxes and people feeling as though the wealth don't pay enough. And that's why there's support for Bernie that endures in spite of the rise of Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden's consistency. There's still a strong, palpable grassroots support for Senator Sanders. And I think it's because he's right about the fact that the rich, the ultra rich haven't paid their fair share, and so many people are being left behind economically.
You know, Inez, I think the way Senator Warren qualifies that capitalist statement is to say when it works for everybody. Her argument, and maybe one she'll espouse tomorrow, is it's not working for everyone, and don't sign me up or say that I support that. But that's a tough argument to make in a general election where you're kind of looking like you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. How does that ultimately fall out?
Sure, and there's a huge difference between the Democratic base and the average American on this, especially young Democrats. And actually young Americans in general have higher positive views for socialism than they do for capitalism. Look, at the end of the day, I find it funny that this is two millionaires throwing the word capitalist as a pejorative back and forth at each other. But I do think it reflects where the Democratic base is, and that is with actually saying that one is a socialist. And certainly nobody can say that more authentically than Bernie Sanders. I mean, he was praising the Chavez Revolution, the Chavez Socialist Revolution in Venezuela right up until the point where they ran out of toilet paper, at which case it finally became just not real socialism. So he certainly has the authentic credentials as a socialist going back. So I guess that's now something to make hay out of in the Democratic primary.
Guys, if I can reverse course for some breaking news, I hope you'll indulge me, but you're real pros at doing this. We're just getting word from the White House, which was announcing that it was going to be slapping economic sanctions potentially on Turkey for its incursion into northern Syria and potential human rights abuses, that those 1,000 American troops who were scheduled to leave Syria will now remain in the region to help prevent a revival of the Islamic State. Kevin, I know I'm just throwing this at you, and as you as well. What do you make of that? It's a big reversal for the president.
I think it's a great decision, and I celebrate it because I think that making the move the way the president did sent a horrible message to our allies, and it also served to undercut the military and people who are high-ranking in our own government who didn't even know he was going to do this. They found out about it on Twitter. So I think this was a very good decision, and I think it will help to stem sort of the rising violence we've seen in the area. So I think it's a good thing.
And Inez, we're also hearing from the president that the U.S. is going to boost the steel imports, tariffs on anything pretty much coming in or out of Turkey. Other sanctions to include that have not been specified because of that incursion into Syria. So he is saying he's doing all of this in response to Turkey sort of overdoing it. But again, that's a big 180 for him. And to the generals and the critics and the supporters alike, a good 180. What do you make of it?
Look, I think the president is trying to balance between the promises that he made coming in, which was to pull America out of a very interventionist foreign policy that it had under Bush and then to a lesser extent under Obama. But I do think this is probably one of those instances. This was not a good test case where we had a relatively small American investment, and there was a lot of fear for Turkey to come in. The question is, would Turkey actually start shooting at American soldiers, and would there be American loss of life? And that's the kind of thing where the president had to make a call. I think he made it probably in the worst possible way. And this was one of those cases where, for a relatively small investment of peacekeeping troops, essentially, we could have prevented real damage to our allies. And I'm glad the president has reversed his decision on this. America has few allies that are as loyal, I think, as the Kurds in that region. And I'm happy that the president has changed his mind. But he's really between a rock and a hard place because he promised his voters he was going to pull us out around the world. And I think that's what he was trying to demonstrate here.
All right. Well, the outcry was maybe a bit severe and across the board. Guys, thank you very much. Again,